Deconstructing fake love and emotional fraud in interpersonal relationships. Fake love or emotional fraud is a deliberate pattern of relational exploitation where one party feigns emotional investment to manipulate another's attachment system for personal gain. Unlike unintentional emotional unavailability, this behavior is rooted in strategic interpersonal deception, characterized by instrumental empathy, simulating care to extract resources, and asymmetric reciprocity, demanding emotional labor without reciprocation. It aligns with the dark triad traits, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, where relational dynamics are weaponized for control, validation, or material benefit. Key differentiators. Intentionality. Perpetrators consciously manipulate emotional signals. Exploitation. The relationship serves unilateral needs, for example, ego gratification, financial gain. Behavioral incongruence. Discrepancies between professed affection and actions are systematic, not incidental. Evolutionary mating strategies. Short-term mating orientation. Predatory actors may employ love bombing or intermittent reinforcement to secure transient partnerships while avoiding investment. Buss and Schmidt, 1993. Social exchange theory. Perpetrators maximize rewards, for example, attention, sex, financial support, while minimizing costs, for example, emotional labor, commitment. Personality pathology. Narcissistic supply. Narcissists crave admiration and use partners as narcissistic extensions to bolster fragile self-esteem. Withdrawal, for example, ghosting, induces partner anxiety, reinforcing control. Machiavellian tactics. Calculated manipulation, for example, gaslighting, breadcrumbing, creates dependency, enabling exploitation of resources. Attachment dysregulation. Fearful avoidant attachment. Perpetrators may oscillate between intimacy and withdrawal to avoid vulnerability, trapping partners in cycles of hope and rejection. Anxious attachment. High need for validation increases susceptibility to intermittent reinforcement. Cognitive dissonance. Victims rationalize inconsistent behaviors, for example, they're busy but they care, to preserve relational narratives. Trauma. Repetition. Unresolved childhood wounds may normalize exploitative dynamics, mistaking intensity for intimacy. Strategic incongruence, words versus actions. Cognitive dissonance. Induction. Perpetrators use poetic declarations, "You're my soulmate," juxtaposed with neglect, destabilizing victims' reality testing. Gaslighting. Invalidating victims' perceptions, for example, "You're overreacting," to obscure manipulation. Intermittent reinforcement. Breadcrumbing. Sparse affirmations, for example, "I miss you" texts, activate dopamine pathways, creating addiction-like dependency. Skinner, 1953. Cyclical withdrawal, re-engagement. Sudden disappearances followed by grand gestures, for example, gifts, apologies, reinforce traumatic bonding. Asymmetric power dynamics. Emotional labor. Imbalance. Victims overcompensate to earn affection, while perpetrators withhold to maintain control. Triangulation. Introducing rivals, real or imagined, to induce jealousy and compliance. Hyper-individualism. Capitalist paradigms frame relationships as transactional, incentivizing emotional freeloading. Illouz, 2012. Digital mediation. Social media enables curated personas and low-effort interactions, for example, liking posts instead of meaningful engagement. Normalization of ambiguity. Hookup culture and situationships obscure commitment expectations, aiding manipulators in evading accountability. Behavioral pattern recognition. Microanalytic coding. Track inconsistencies, for example, canceled plans, delayed replies, over time to identify exploitative cycles. Cost-benefit analysis. Quantify emotional, temporal, and material investments versus returns. Neurocognitive interventions. Mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, MBCT, disrupts rumination on perpetrator cues by grounding in present reality. Exposure therapy, gradual desensitization to intermittent reinforcement triggers. Structural safeguards. Boundary scripting, predefine non-negotiable standards. For example, I will not tolerate silent treatment. Social scaffolding, engage trusted networks to audit relational narratives and counteract isolation. Institutional advocacy. Policy interventions, recognize emotional fraud in workplace harassment frameworks and legal contexts, for example, coercive control statutes. Emotional fraud is a systemic issue reflecting broader socio-cultural decay in relational ethics. Future research should explore. Neuroimaging correlates how intermittent reinforcement impacts the ventral striatum in victims. Cross-cultural variances, collectivist versus individualist tolerances for asymmetric relationships. Technotherapeutic solutions, AI-driven tools to detect linguistic manipulation, for example, love-bombing lexicons. Final assertion. Emotional fraud is not merely a relational dysfunction but a manifestation of structural inequities in how intimacy is commodified. Combating it requires interdisciplinary collaboration across psychology, neuroscience, and sociology.